Hey everybody, what's going on? So today I want to just do a quick product review of a new device that we've picked up for Carolyn. For those that don't know, or those that do know, Carolyn has lost basically all of her muscle strength in her legs and her feet. And so unfortunately that removes some of her independence, specifically in the area of being able to transfer herself from her wheelchair to other surfaces. What that means is, as her caregiver, I am having to do stand and lift pivot transfers. And on average, it's upwards of 25, 26 of those a day. And as you can imagine, that eventually starts to take a toll on your neck, your back, your arms, your shoulders. So for in the house, we have a proper Hoyer lift to help us with these types of transfers. But one of the areas that we don't have anything, especially something that's somewhat portable, is the car. And so I've been seeing these devices on Facebook and YouTube quite a bit lately. But I have to admit, I was pretty skeptical because, number one, it's made in China. And number two, there's no real videos out there showing it actually being used by somebody that really needs to use it. So as you can see here, I'm cranking this handle up and my feet have now come off the footrests. And this is made out of a pretty heavy duty steel material. And it is rated supposedly for 400 pounds maximum weight. What I'll say is I'm pretty much half of the 400-pound weight, and you can see that it's holding me. Carolyn is nowhere near the 400 pounds, so it'll have no problem holding her. But what this will do, as you'll see in the review, is allow me to be able to get her into the car safely, as well as other friends potentially, into the car safely without ruining our backs, shoulders, and necks to do so. And so I hope you enjoy this video. All in all, I would say that this product does something that we need it to do, and I'm hoping that it will last a long time. I do provide some comments at the end of the video on how I think it could be improved. And to be totally honest with you, I would do anything that I have to do to help my wife to have a better quality of life and to have a sense of her independence back. And one of the areas that I want to try to improve that is with regards to being able to go out with friends. And so I'm hoping something like this will actually help her to be able to do that. It is a little cumbersome, but I think if you take a few extra minutes and you have a vehicle that's able to transport this, then she'll be able to go out and do things with her friends like she used to do before she started having problems. So the first step is going to be that she needs to have this sling underneath her. So when she's not in the chair and when she's about ready to be transferred from some other surface using the Hoyer lift, that'll be a great time to get that in place. And you'll notice that the buckles are on each of the four corners. So we're going to go ahead and put her in her chair on this sling. Okay, so we'll wheel this up right up to her chair. And then there's these safety buckles right here. We're going to just connect those in on all four corners.
Can't touch this one.
Okay, so now she is connected to the belts.
Back piece.
And we're going to use the hand crank.
Back piece.
Oh, back piece, yep. So now what we're going to do is put the back piece back in to keep her from falling out the back.
That wouldn't be good.
There's also these pins right here that need to be put into the bottom of these pins on the device itself. And these are just cotter pins to keep this pin from popping out. And what I'll say is it's probably a little uncomfortable with the back piece there. Is that true?
Yes,
Yeah.
It needs a cushion.
Little cushion.
Pillow.
So now what we do is we basically turn this crank like this. And the unit's center post will start to raise. I believe it gets up to 42 inches.
I don't know.
There's also locks on the wheels, but this unit isn't moving very much right now with the weight, so I don't have the locks engaged. But for safety purposes, you probably should engage the locks.
Yeah, there's one more step.
It's one more step. Okay, so as you can see, she's up nice and high now. So now what we'll do is we'll kind of help put her feet over these footrests. And then we're going to gently pull her away from her chair, like so. This may be a good time to put the brakes on, especially if she's going downhill. Move her chair out of the way, then push her back
It's
so that
getting chilly outside.
so that you can open the car door. And then we're going to position the lift alongside the car. Have her duck her head just to be safe. But you'll see that the unit is now has her positioned in the car over her seat. So now, like we did to raise her up, we basically turn the handle to lower this. And again, this might be a good opportunity to put the brakes on so that the unit isn't moving once it's in place. Are you on the seat?
Yes, I am on the seat.
Okay, so now that she's on the seat, what we're going to do is just disconnect the safety buckles on all four corners. And this sling stays with her. We're then going to remove the back piece, this bar that was on the back. And then we'll just gently,
This one's connected.
oh, that buckle's still connected. And then what we'll do is just gently pull the unit away from the car. And now the lifting is minimal at this point for the caregiver because you just have to essentially swivel her legs in while turning the sling on the seat. Something like that.
We have not yet perfected it, but we will.
So now you can see she's in the car safely. Very minimal lifting on my part, and thus saving my back. Now I'm going to walk through the process of how to break this down in case you want to take it and store it in your vehicle. So first step is to remove this back piece, like so, and just lean it up against the car or on the ground somewhere. Next step is going to be to remove the cotter pins from the bottom of these pins. And then very gently lift up the arm and then just pop these pins out and hold on to them. And then slowly, while holding this in, rotate the arm downward. Now these do want to fall out naturally because there's nothing holding them in place. So make sure you keep those intact. We'll do the same thing on this side. Rotate down. Now you will have the 4 pins. My recommendation is to put these in your pocket or maybe put them in the console of your car, but don't lose them. Otherwise, this lift is useless. So now that we have the main part of the lift broken down, we're just going to grab on either side of these arms and push in to keep these from falling out. And we're going to make sure that this is cranked down as low as it goes, which it is currently. Now we're just going to give it a little pull up, and you'll see that it just comes out. So we're going to go ahead and store that against the car. And the final step to breaking it down is to close this back up so that it's as narrow as it can be. So we're just going to loosen these knobs. not all the way. Now we're going to just place one hand underneath here and gently lift it up while pushing this side in, like so. Do the same thing on this side. And then just gently tighten the knobs so that they don't slide all over the place. And now that all the pieces are broken down, we're ready to load it into the car. So we're just going to open the car door. And I'm going to start by putting in the base. Then I'm going to grab the centerpiece, again holding these arms to keep them in place. And then last but not least, the back panel. And as you can see, this is the unit completely broken down and in the back seat of my RAV4. And you'll notice that I have the back seats folded down because in the trunk, that is going to be where her wheelchair will go. Reassembly, I would recommend engaging the brakes. And as I said, here's the base, and then here is the main part of the lift. What you want to do is you want to pick up this part of the lift with that label facing towards you, and you're basically going to insert that into there. So holding on both sides to keep these arms in, we're going to lift up and then just place that in there and then push it down. So that's step one. Step two is we have these 4 pins that I showed earlier in the video. These 4 pins are going to be inserted into the holes for the arms to stay in an upright position. So basically we're going to take the arm and rotate it up like so. If we're looking at it from the top down, you can see the holes here. So we're just going to line them up and then insert the pins till they go through all the way to the bottom. And now you'll see that this arm is secured and in place. So then you're simply going to insert the cotter pins into the bottom of these pins, like so. This is just to prevent the pins from popping out accidentally when there's weight on it. And then you repeat the same steps on the other side to secure the other arm. So here we are on the other side. I'm going to get them lined up. Sometimes you may need to jiggle the arm itself to get this so that it falls in nice and clean. And I'm trying to do this with one hand, so it's not going to work very well. Here we go. And again, insert the cotter pins into the bottom of the pin. The next step is going to be to widen the feet so that they'll fit around Carolyn's chair. And you can do this either now or you can do it before you insert this piece here. So what we need to do to widen these is we need to loosen these knobs right here. And then kind of put one hand under here and pick up a little bit, and then slide out the side like so, and then just retighten this knob. And I'll have markings as to what is the right spot. So I'll do the same thing over here. Tighten it again. And now it's ready to go get Carolyn. Now that I have the unit reassembled, I'm going to go ahead and disengage the brakes. And I'm going to lift it up a little bit just by turning the crank, because we're now going to get Carolyn out of the car. So my recommendation for getting her out of the car, hi, because this seat has like a little bit of a lip on either side, is we're going to kind of pivot her legs out of the car so that they're hanging down here. But at the same time we're pivoting her, we're going to try and grab the mat. And I can't do that while holding the camera. So I'm going to go ahead and get her in that orientation and then pick up from there. Okay, so what I typically am doing here is I'm taking the belts on either side of this mat and I'm just kind of pulling them up around her. And then I'm putting my hands under her knees and pivoting her out. And you can see that the sling actually kind of slides nicely. So now what we'll do is get the lift in place, connect the safety buckles back up, and then get her out. So as you can see, this is one of the safety buckles. Carolyn's snapping that one in to place. And the others are also on either side of her, in the front and back, so we'll go ahead and secure those. Now that we have all the buckles connected, we need to put this back piece in. So I'm going to go ahead and insert it there and do the same thing on the other side. Make sure it pushes all the way down in. The other thing to note also is that because Carolyn's not able to move her feet and legs really, we have to pay close attention to make sure that when we're putting this lift in, that her feet aren't like bent underneath here, because we could hurt her ankles. So we're going to pick them up and put them on the footrests the best that we can. Same thing when we put her in the car. We want to make sure that when we push this in close to the car to get her on the seat, that same issue isn't occurring. We want to make sure that her feet are on the footrests and pay attention to how much they're pushing against the side of the car down here. So now that everything is secured, we're going to go ahead and crank this bad boy up. So now that everything's hooked up safely, we're going to go ahead and crank this up. And it's up to Carolyn to watch her head to make sure she doesn't hit it on the top of the door here.
I thought it was up to the driver. Or the cranker.
And when this is done going up as high as it can go, it'll actually stop itself. Like it won't go any further.
That's the way it works.
So we'll go ahead and pull her out of the car. And then we're just going to leave her here for a little while so she can hang out in the nice weather.
Oh, yeah.
But just carefully and safely move away from the car. And then come over and line up with the chair. And I learned from lessons here, now is not the time to learn that your feet on the unit are not spread apart far enough to fit on either side of her chair. That's why I'm going to try to have it marked with a Sharpie or something so that we know exactly where it needs to be. But now that she's over the chair, we're just going to crank this down. So what I'll say is it definitely saves on back pain and back strain, but there is quite a bit of this motion going on here that will also get tiring after a while. I think I'm going to look into ways of potentially hooking up like a drill with a bit on it to this to make it more efficient.
If you're in
And
a rush,
you'll notice right now what's happening is her feet are starting to fall behind the foot pedals. So we're going to go ahead and just take a break for a minute here, stop and put them back up on here. Especially this one. And we're going to go ahead and just crank it down all the way to the bottom here. There we go. And then we're just going to take off the back piece, undo the safety buckles on either side. and then just carefully pull the unit away. And she's now in her chair with no need to do any heavy lifting.
Good thoughts are it saves on Brian's back. It's easy to assemble, I think. If you're in a rush, don't use it. Bad part is now that I'm sitting on this mat all day, I have 4 seatbelt buckles, and what do I do with these? Because they would become very inconvenient. It's not overly comfortable. It's not wicked uncomfortable, but not the most comfortable thing. But those are my goods and bads.
Do you feel safe in it?
Yes. The back piece is very uncomfortable when you're first sitting in it because you're leaning against this thing and it's pushing in your back. But as it's going up higher and higher, it tends to pull away somehow. I'm not sure how, but you're not leaning on it the whole time. And if you're only using it for quick getting in and out of the car, then you don't have to worry about it. All in all, it's a good product. I don't know how you would fix this though.
So with regards to areas that I think things could be improved, one of the first things I'll say is that this back piece, when you put it in there, it does not line up properly right here. So you do have to kind of push it so that it falls into place. And now I understand that the tension between these two arms is what's keeping this in now, but maybe a better design there. The next thing would be these arms. So these arms, when Carolyn is sitting in here, you can see that the belts are like right here. So she kind of has to lean forward. Otherwise, this is just digging into her back. I honestly can't picture someone much bigger than Carolyn sitting in this comfortably for any period of time. Next, I'll say I'm curious as to how long these will last. This is metal, but there's basically just a threaded screw going through there. You can see there's a nut on the other side. I'm just curious how long those are going to last. Next would be the crank. So this crank comes off. I would like to see some way of potentially making this more streamlined by using like a socket or something and a cordless drill or a ratchet. The other thing would be these pins. So when you take these pins out, there's nowhere to put them on here. It would be cool if maybe there was like a little holder that you could put them in. But when I disassemble this, you'll see that I end up having to basically put these in my pocket for when I go to put it back together again. So it would be great to have a better place to put those. Also, maybe attaching something to the head so that it can hang on here, kind of like I've done with these lanyards for the cotter pins that I bought. Next would be these wheels, the casters. So they glide very smoothly across the different surfaces that I've used it on so far, but I'm a little concerned that these are going to break down over time because, as you can see, they're just plastic. And these brake mechanisms, they seem pretty strong, but I'm curious as the tread of this tire wears down, how well those are going to keep the tire still. It would also be great if this entire post right here had some kind of a hinge mechanism at the bottom so that you could fold this down onto the legs for when you store it in your car. Now, I do realize that this is all nicely welded to this base to give it its structural integrity, but that would be a good improvement to be able to collapse it in a more portable fashion. And then the other thing I was thinking too is to get these opened. If you don't measure before you put someone in the actual seat, it's too late at that point. So if you need to widen the feet on this, you're not able to do it when somebody's in the seat. So some way that you could potentially widen it while there's somebody in the seat would be useful as well. Also, I realize on these arms, when you take the pins out, when you swing them down, there's now nothing holding this arm into this socket here. So if you're not careful, this arm will just completely fall out. So it would be great if they did like those snap clips so that when you put it down here, they just pop out to keep this arm in place, and then you can squeeze them and then rotate the arm up and then put your pins in on either side. That would be a good improvement also. And another item would be the length of these arms. So as I mentioned before, the back piece does dig into somebody's back of Carolyn's size, and she's very small. It would be great if there was a way for these arms to have somewhat of a telescoping feature or the ability to just expand them a little bit. That would also come in handy when putting someone into the car. Basically, once this post hits the threshold of your car door, if these arms don't have the person far enough into the car yet for you to lower them, then it's not really useful. So it would be great if this could be controlled with some kind of a mechanism as well to make it longer or shorter as needed.